What happens when Detroit drops the most feared engine of its era into a body built for speed and intimidation? The result wasn't just fast, it was terrifying. The 426 HEMI wasn't a motor, it was a declaration of war, and in the 70s, only the bold dared tame it. Top 1. 1970 Dodge Charger Daytona HEMI. The Dodge Charger Daytona wasn't built for subtlety, it was built for speed records. With its spear-like nose cone and skyscraper rear wing, it looked more like a space-age experiment than a muscle car. And with the 426 HEMI lurking under its hood, the Daytona wasn't just fast, it was terrifying. Born out of Dodge's obsession with dominating NASCAR, the Daytona was the ultimate evolution of the Charger. Engineers stretched the front end with an aerodynamic nose that reduced drag, while the 23-inch wing out back planted the car to the asphalt at speeds over 200 mph. On the street, this aero kit turned heads everywhere it looked, unlike anything else rolling off Detroit assembly lines. Inside, however, it was familiar muscle, vinyl bucket seats, optional Rally-I-1 150 mph speedometer, and a pistol grip shifter for 4-speed cars. But the soul of the Daytona was its engine, the 426 Street HEMI. Officially rated at 425 horsepower, it actually produced closer to 470, with 490 pound-feet of torque. Backed by a TorqueFlite automatic or a heavy-duty 4-speed with Dana 60 rear, the Daytona HEMI could sprint to 60 mph in 5.5 seconds and rip through the quarter mile in 13.5 at over 105 minutes at over 105 mph. And yet, as outrageous as it looked and as powerful as it was, the Daytona nearly failed in the showroom. Out of 503 Daytonas built, only 70 carried the 426 HEMI. Buyers balked at the price, the radical looks, and brutal insurance rates. Many sat unsold on dealer lots, even discounted, while buyers turned to cheaper 440-powered versions. The very excess that made the Daytona legendary also made it nearly impossible to sell in 1970. Decades later, that scarcity transformed the HEMI Daytona into Mopar royalty. Today's surviving examples regularly fetch between $900,000 and $1.3 million at auction. What was once ridiculed as too wild is now celebrated as one of the boldest engineering statements of the muscle car era. It wasn't just a car, it was Dodge's declaration of war on aerodynamics, racing, and the limits of speed itself. But Plymouth had an answer of its own. Their GTX HEMI skipped the wings and nose cones, wrapping the same 426 Fury inside a gentleman's body, where refinement met raw firepower. Top 2 1970 Plymouth GTX HEMI. If the Daytona was Detroit's wild child, the Plymouth GTX HEMI was its refined cousin, a gentleman's hot rod with chrome trim and clean lines. But beneath that polished exterior lay the same beastly 426 HEMI, ready to turn civility into chaos with one stab of the throttle. The mini-cylinder Brooker engine that weighed only 20 kilograms, produced with 100% more thorough brushing, and the GTX entered 1970 with a sharper, more upscale look. Its loop bumper wrapped around a split grille, while sculpted fenders and optional air-grabber hood gave it menace without excess. Buyers found the GTX positioned above the rowdy Roadrunner. It carried more standard equipment, more refinement, and more polish. Inside, the cabin leaned toward luxury for the muscle era, wood-grain dash applique, high-back bucket seats, and insulation to dampen road noise. But ticking the HEMI box erased any pretense of comfort. The 426 Street HEMI, officially 425 horsepower but realistically closer to 470, made the GTX a wolf in a tailored suit. With either a TorqueFlite automatic or 4-speed manual tied to a Dana 60 rear, the GTX HEMI could run 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds and finish the quarter mile in about 13.5 at 106 mph. The surprising part? Very few buyers actually ordered it. Out of 7,748 GTXs built in 1970, only 72 carried the 426 HEMI, 71 hardtops, and a single convertible. That lone ragtop is one of the rarest Mopars on Earth. Buyers often chose the 446 Baral instead, a cheaper and nearly as fast option, leaving the mighty HEMI cars to languish in obscurity. That scarcity has transformed the GTX HEMI into a crown jewel. Hardtops can command $200,000 to $300,000 at auction, while the one convertible is considered priceless. The GTX HEMI symbolizes a balance no other Mopar achieved. Luxury touches paired with uncompromised muscle. It wasn't flashy like a Superbird or stripped like a Roadrunner, but it had the same lethal core hidden under refinement. But refinement had its limits. Dodge's Charger RT HEMI took the same brute engine, dropped it in a heavier, meaner body, and reminded the world that brute force could still wear a badge. Top 3 1970 Dodge Charger RT HEMI. Few muscle cars carried as much swagger as the 1970 Dodge Charger RT HEMI. With its menacing Coke bottle curves and hidden headlights, it looked like a movie star, but under the hood, the 426 HEMI turned it into a certified street assassin. For 1970, the Charger received a mild facelift, a loop front bumper surrounding a split grille, cleaner lines, and taillights that stretched across the rear. The RT trim, short for Road Track, was Dodge's performance flagship, complete with heavy-duty suspension, special badging, and visual punch. Inside, drivers got high-back vinyl buckets, wood grain accents, and the option of a pistol grip 4-speed. But nothing mattered more than what lurked under the hood. The 426 Street HEMI, factory rated at 425 horsepower but closer to 470 in real-world trim, delivered 490 pound-feet of torque through either a torque flight automatic or the brutal 4-speed manual tied to a Dana 60 rear axle. Performance was staggering for a 2-ton coupe, 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds, and quarter-mile times in the mid-13s at over 105 mph. The shocking reality? Almost nobody bought one. Out of nearly 49,800 Chargers produced in 1970, only 112 were built with the 426 HEMI, split evenly between 56 automatics and 56 manuals. Rising insurance rates and the availability of the cheaper 446-pack pushed most buyers away from the HEMI. Cars that should have been Mopar's crown jewels sat idle on dealer lots, waiting for the rare brave soul who wanted the ultimate Charger. Today, that rarity fuels their legend. A documented HEMI Charger RT can bring $250,000 to $400,000 at auction, with pristine 4-speed examples climbing even higher. The car's combination of Hollywood looks, NASCAR heritage, and HEMI muscle make it one of Dodge's most iconic creations. It embodies the perfect collision of style and substance, an intimidating body with the firepower to back it up. But Dodge wasn't the only brand chasing extremes. Plymouth was already experimenting with wings, nose cons, and aerodynamics to bend air itself into submission. The Superbird HEMI was waiting in the wings. Top 4 1970 Plymouth Superbird HEMI. It was the car that looked too wild to be real. The 1970 Plymouth Superbird HEMI was part race car, part science experiment, and all muscle. With its pointed nose cone and towering rear wing, it didn't just defy convention, it rewrote it. The Superbird existed for one reason: NASCAR. Plymouth built it to lure Richard Petty back and to crush high-speed competition. Aerodynamics ruled its design. The elongated nose cut drag, while the 23-inch rear stabilizer wing delivered downforce at 200 mph. On the street, this meant the Superbird looked more like a prototype than a production car. The interior was pure Plymouth B-body, bucket seats, rally gauges, and a pistol grip shifter, if you checked the 4-speed box. Under the hood sat the ultimate option, the 426 Street HEMI. Rated at 425 horsepower but pushing closer to 470 in reality, it produced 490 pound-feet of torque. With either a torque flight automatic or 4-speed Dana 60 combo, the HEMI Superbird could rocket to 60 mph in 5.5 seconds and tear through the quarter in about 13.5 seconds at over 105 mph. For all its genius, the Superbird flopped at dealerships. Out of roughly 1,920 Superbirds built, only 135 carried the HEMI dot. Most buyers balked at the $4,300 price tag, steep insurance premiums, and radical looks. Dealers were stuck with winged warriors sitting unsold, often discounted just to clear space. What fans now consider an engineering marvel was, in 1970, too extreme for the average muscle car buyer. Time has transformed the story. Today, HEMI Superbirds are million-dollar cars, prized for their rarity, racing pedigree, and outrageous design. At auctions, they draw crowds as living artifacts of when Detroit dared to push beyond the limits of style and speed. Once mocked as unsellable, they are now Mopar's most collectible statement piece, a perfect fusion of muscle and aerodynamics. But Plymouth's winged warrior wasn't its only shot of Hemi thunder. For buyers who wanted power without the spectacle, the Roadrunner Hemi offered cartoon charm and raw force in a more street-friendly package. Top 5 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner Hemi. It was supposed to be the cheap thrill muscle car, but the moment you added the 426 Hemi, the 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner became anything but budget. Suddenly, the cartoon bird on the grille hid one of the most feared predators in Detroit. By 1970, the Roadrunner had already won Motor Trend's Car of the Year, proving that muscle didn't need luxury to sell. The refreshed design added a new loop bumper, bold stripes, and a menacing stance. Inside, it was intentionally barebones: vinyl bench seats, simple dash layout, and the famous beep, beep horn that gave the car its personality. But with the Hemi option, all fun turned deadly serious. The 426th Street Hemi, conservatively rated at 425 horsepower, was backed by 490 pound-feet of torque. Paired with either a 4-speed manual and Dana 60 rear or Torque Flight automatic, the Roadrunner Hemi could blast from 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds and storm through the quarter mile in 13.5 at 105 mph numbers that embarrassed many so-called premium performance cars of the era. Yet despite its reputation, almost no one ordered the Hemi. Out of 41,484 Roadrunners built in 1970, only 75 carried the 426 Hemi, 71 hardtops, and just 4 convertibles. Insurance hikes and high premiums scared off buyers, who often chose the cheaper 383 or the 446 barrel. Dealers struggled to sell Hemi models, and some even sat unsold well into 1971. Today, those 75 cars are legendary. A clean hardtop will bring $200,000 to $300,000, while one of the 4 convertibles is a 7-figure unicorn. The Roadrunner Hemi is remembered as a perfect contradiction, a car built for cheap thrills, but transformed by its monstrous engine into a collector's treasure. It showed that Plymouth could make muscle playful and deadly at the same time. But if the Roadrunner was the trickster with hidden claws, Dodge had its own street brawler, the Coronet Superbird Hemi, a car that proved raw aggression didn't need polish to terrify rivals. Top 6 1970 Dodge Coronet Superbird Hemi. It wasn't pretty, and Dodge never pretended it was. The 1970 Coronet Superbird Hemi was a blunt instrument, blocky body, twin-loop front bumper, and a stinger badge that warned anyone daring enough to line up beside it. The Superbird was Dodge's bargain bruiser, aimed at young buyers who wanted muscle without frills. For 1970, it received a divisive new design, a bumblebee split-front grille that looked more aggressive than stylish. The body was wide, heavy, and unrefined compared to Dodge's sleeker Charger. Inside, the theme continued bencher bucket vinyl seats, simple dash layout, optional pistol grip shifter, and little luxury padding. But for those who checked the right box on the order sheet, the car became something else entirely. The 426th Street Hemi, rated at 425 horsepower and 490 pound-feet torque, turned the Superbird into a quarter-mile predator. With the 4-speed manual and Dana 60 rear axle, it could hit 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds and cover the quarter in about 13.6 at 104 mph. Here's the kicker. Despite being one of the cheapest ways to buy a Hemi, almost no one ordered it. Out of 15,506 Superbirds built in 1970, only 32 were Hemi-equipped, 21 hardtops and 11 coupes. Buyers usually stuck with the 383 or 446 pack, which offered plenty of punch without the cost, noise, and insurance nightmare of the Hemi. Ironically, the car meant to bring Mopar power to the masses ended up producing one of the rarest Hemis of all. That rarity has turned the 1970 Superbird Hemi into a cult legend. Auction prices for documented cars easily top $200,000, and survivors are prized for their raw, unpolished character. It wasn't glamorous like a Cuda or outrageous like a Superbird, but it delivered pure muscle in its most stripped-down form, a true working-class hero with nuclear firepower under the hood. But Dodge also had another card to play. For buyers who wanted style, presence, and Hemi thunder in one package, the Challenger RT Hemi was waiting, with sleeker lines and pony car swagger. Top 7 1970 Dodge Challenger RT Hemi. The Challenger arrived late to the pony car party, But Dodge wasn't interested in subtle entries. The 1970 Challenger RT HEMI stormed into the segment with aggressive lines, big options, and the 426 HEMI as its ace in the hole. This wasn't just a rival to Mustang or Camaro, it was an executioner. The Challenger's debut year gave Dodge something it had lacked, a true E-body pony car. Longer and wider than Plymouth's Barracuda, it offered more comfort while still projecting menace. The RT trim added muscle credentials with bumblebee stripes, bold RT badges, and the option of a shaker hood scoop that vibrated with every throttle blip. Inside, the Challenger was almost upscale wood-grain dash applique, Raleigh instrument cluster, and high-back bucket seats. But all eyes were on the monster under its hood. The 426th Street HEMI, factory rated at 425 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque, was notorious for being underrated. In reality, it churned closer to 470 horses. Coupled with either a torque-flight automatic or a pistol-grip 4-speed with Dana 60 rear, the HEMI Challenger could rocket to 60 mph in 5.7 seconds and cover the quarter-mile in 13.6 at over 104 mph. And yet, despite its appeal, the HEMI Challenger was nearly extinct from the start. Out of 76,935 Challengers built in 1970, only 356 carried the 426 HEMI, 287 hardtops, and just 60 convertibles, with a handful in the rare SE luxury trim. Buyers flocked to cheaper 446 packs, leaving HEMI cars as an expensive gamble in a changing market. The convertibles in particular became near mythical rarities. Today, those 356 HEMI Challengers are the stuff of Mopar dreams. A pristine convertible can crack the $1 million mark, while hardtops regularly exceed $300,000. The Challenger RT HEMI embodies Dodge's audacity, a pony car with more size, more style, and more raw horsepower than its rivals. It was bold, brash, and short-lived, an instant classic born into an era already closing. And if the Challenger was the stylish fighter, Plymouth's Cuda HEMI was the knockout punch, a shorter, meaner E-body that became the ultimate street legend. Top 8 1970 Plymouth Cuda HEMI. It was the car that made even seasoned street racers nervous. The 1970 Plymouth Cuda HEMI wasn't just another muscle car, it was Detroit's brawler in its purest form. A shorter, meaner E-body wrapped around Chrysler's legendary 426 HEMI. The Cuda was Plymouth's answer to the pony car wars, but it was no lightweight pretender. For 1970, the redesigned E-body gave the Cuda wide fenders, a low-slung stance, and optional shaker hood that trembled with every heartbeat of the engine beneath. Inside, it was stripped yet stylish high-back vinyl buckets, rally dash cluster, and pistol grip shifter for the 4-speed. Under the hood, the real magic happened. The 4.26 Street HEMI, officially rated at 425 horsepower but closer to 470 in truth, delivered 490 pound-feet of torque through a torque-flight automatic or 4-speed Dana 60 rear combo. Performance was savage, 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds, and the quarter-mile in 13.4 at 108 mph, making it one of the fastest factory street cars of its era. But as powerful and iconic as it was, the Cuda HEMI was almost invisible on sale sheets. Out of 17,242 Cudas built in 1970, only 652 received the HEMI 368 hardtops and 14 convertibles in the base model, and just 268 in the performance Cuda trim. Those convertibles, with only a handful surviving today, are among the rarest and most valuable muscle cars ever made. Buyers were scared off by the high cost, astronomical insurance premiums, and brutal fuel consumption. Many chose the cheaper 446 barrel instead, leaving the HEMI Cuda to languish on lots. That scarcity has since turned the Cuda HEMI into Mopar's ultimate prize. Hardtops regularly bring $400,000 to $600,000, while convertibles have sold for over $3 million at auction. The Cuda HEMI represents the pinnacle of Plymouth muscle, a street car that looked menacing, sounded apocalyptic, and backed it all up with devastating speed. The 1970 Cuda HEMI didn't just set records, it set the standard. With its wide stance, snarling shaker hood, and a 426 that devoured everything in its path, it became the car that defined Mopar fearlessness. From winged warriors to street bruisers, these 8 HEMI legends prove the 70s were a battlefield of horsepower. Each car carried the same 426 thunder, but wore it in a different skin luxury, style, or raw aggression, and every one of them left behind stories of rarity, dominance, and unmatched muscle. Which HEMI monster would you put in your garage? Drop your pick in the comments, we read every one. If you loved this deep dive into Mopar history, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the roar of muscle cars revolution.